What is up, all you beautiful people? Welcome back to another NFL mock draft. This is going to be my final one as we lead up to the 2026 NFL draft. I am super excited to see what happens in this, and I'm really hoping that there's a lot of radical change from what we expect or what the consensus is with this draft. But before we get into doing it, I do just want to express like a heartfelt thank you to everybody who's watched my videos, engaged with my content, and even just shared it a like or subscribed. This has probably been the most growth that I've ever experienced on my YouTube channel. So I'm just very thankful for that, even if you don't fully agree with some of my takes that I have. But with that being said, let's go ahead, let's dive into this and do one final mock draft. There's been a whole lot of change. Obviously, the Dexter Lawrence trade to Cincinnati has really shaken things up. But at the top of the draft here, I think this is the most obvious one. I still think that it's going to be Fernando Mendoza going number 1 overall to the Las Vegas Raiders. At number 2 with the Jets, I think this is where we started to hear from a lot of NFL analysts about some of the recent change. And I kind of said this in my first mock draft where I thought it was still going to be Arvell Reese where they take a swing on the upside but are looking in other directions. But now with what I'm hearing, what the chatter is kind of suggesting, I think that they're kind of looking at a different direction. They saw in the pro day stuff that Arvell Reese wasn't really the edge rusher right now that they thought he would be. And I think the Jets are looking to get more of a true pass rusher onto this defense. And it seems right now that they favor David Bailey. And I have to say that I agree. I do have to say that I agree that I think David Bailey is going to be the pick here. So I'm going to have them go with the second overall pick, take the edge out of Texas Tech, being David Bailey. At number 3, the Cardinals are in a really interesting position. I like the idea of them going Jeremiah Love personally, and I think that would be a lot of fun. But I do think that they're trying to build for the future, obviously bringing in a new head coach. And I think they understand that given the division that they're in with the Rams, the 49ers, that it's going to be really hard in the Seattle Seahawks. Oh my God, the reigning Super Bowl champs. It's going to be hard for them to compete right away. So let's just play the long game here. Let's really build out the team. So when we're ready to go and get that quarterback, which I assume is going to be next year, that they have a good foundation for them to come into. And for that reason, I do continue with what I said was going to happen last time. I think they go with the best offensive lineman in this class being Francis Mauigoa, the offensive tackle out of the University of Miami, which I think is a great pick for them. Now at number 4, I said that they would go Jeremiah Love, the running back out of Notre Dame, and I think that's still the consensus that's going to happen right here. If they don't trade down or do anything like that. However, with Robert Saleh coming in there, I'm curious if they want to go a different direction. I don't think that this would be an edge rusher because I think Tennessee actually had a very formidable front 7 even last year. I think if they don't go with Jeremiah Love at this spot at number 4, then I think what ends up happening is they go with probably like a freak athlete like Arvell Reese or Sonny Styles and just take a swing on the upside since they're there and just kind of go best player available. You could certainly make the argument that Jeremiah Love is the best player available in this class, but for just kind of being different in this draft, I'm going to say Robert Saleh, the defensive guy, he convinces them to go defense, and I think they do go and take a swing on the upside on what could be with Arvell Reese, the edge out of Ohio State. And I think he could be a really polarizing prospect and add a lot to a defense. And I think, if you want to take a swing on the guy with the most upside, he certainly could be that. And they're a young up-and-coming team. Why not, right? Which brings us to number 5. Now, the first of 2 top 10 first-round picks with the New York Giants. I think that between the 5th pick and the 10th pick, this is most likely going to be a wide receiver and whoever they view as the best defensive player available. I don't think they go edge rusher. I think they have a glaring need at off-ball linebacker, which is where I'm strongly favoring Sonny Styles here. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I also see a world where they could go like Carnell Tate in this situation. But I think their glaring need at off-ball linebacker and just the sheer athleticism that Sonny Styles possesses makes this a no-brainer. They're going to go Sonny Styles, the linebacker out of Ohio State. And I think that's a huge win for the New York Giants. And I'm assuming that they probably go with some sort of offensive talent at the 10th pick, whoever the best player is there. But let's see how this draft falls, and we'll get to that one a little later. So now number 6 with the Cleveland Browns. There's still a lot of really awesome, talented players that are available on the board right here. But for them, I see a lot of teams right here that could potentially be trade down candidates. And I guess the big thing is who really is going to be the other dance partner. I think Daniel Jeremiah talked a lot about this. Who's going to be the guy that you expect to come up into this draft? And who do you think they're going to go up to try and get? I certainly see with Jeremiah Love falling, there could be a world where someone wants to come up and just get Jeremiah Love. But then it becomes, are you trading up to get a running back? Is that really like how you want to set up your team? And so for that reason, I really only see like Ruben Bain, based off how the draft has fallen here, as the guy that someone would kind of trade up to come and get. But I don't know if Ruben Bain is really, given his age and the arm length thing, is the type of prospect that a team would really want to trade up to come and get. So for that reason, I don't think the Browns are able to find a dance partner to trade down at the 6th spot here. So they do have to stick and pick. And based off of team need, I could see them going with some sort of offensive lineman, but I think there's more possibility with that at their 24th pick in this draft. So I think they hold off on that. And I think this is where we see a wide receiver come off the board. And it really becomes whoever you think is your favorite between Carnell Tate, between, Mekhi Lemon, and between Jordan Tyson out of Arizona State. So for them, I think Carnell Tate has the best skill set. So I'm going to have them take Carnell Tate, the wide receiver out of Ohio State. Now, the Washington Commanders actually have a lot of really awesome opportunities here on what they can do with their draft. They could certainly go for Jeremiah Love, who I think is an unbelievable talent and fills a lot of needs on this team. But I think for them, they just need to get more talented and younger across their entire roster. This is one of the oldest teams in the NFL. And for them, I think this is unequivocally a best player available situation. So for that reason, I think it can go a lot of different ways on like who you value the most. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be a little weird here, but I think the value is there. And I think the Commanders wouldn't mind doing it to really take a burden off of Jaden Daniels. And I'm going to have them go Jeremiah Love, the running back out of Notre Dame. I think he's arguably the best player available at number 7, 1. 2, Jaden Daniels, when used as a scrambler in a lot of situations, fell into a lot of really bad injury situations last year. So getting a very talented running back that can do anything that you need him to do, either as a goal line guy, as an every down guy, as a guy out of the backfield, like Jeremiah Love can be all of that in one player, which takes a lot of the burden off of Jaden Daniels to add to this run game. And while Bill Krosky-Merritt, I think, is a great talent, I don't think he's nearly the same type of player that Jeremiah Love is. And I think he adds such an element to this offense, which is really looking to get back to its playoff form just a few years ago. Number 8 with the New Orleans Saints. I love what they're building down there, and I think this division is wide open. So I think the Saints are really looking to turn a corner and compete right away for a playoff spot. So for them, I think they go and make a move that pushes them more into a win now situation. And I think when you look at positional value and going best player available, I think this is easily going to be an edge rusher to pair alongside Chase Young over there, who really has been sneakily very consistent over there in New Orleans. I think he just re-upped on a new deal. But I'm going to have them go Ruben Bain, and you get a nice little pairing there with Chase Young and Ruben Bain in New Orleans, which I think can actually be very good just out of the gate. I think Ruben Bain can transition into the NFL much more seamlessly than some other players in this draft. Number 9 with Kansas City. I think this is without a doubt going to be a cornerback with whichever cornerback is the one that's available. I could see a world where they'd want to go Caleb Downs and just get a versatile chess piece on the defense there that can match up against a bunch of different positions, which has become a much more needed position in the NFL today. Guys like Kyle Hamilton and Nick Emanwari have really made that a prominent role on defense. So you can maintain staying in your base coverage all the time. But they lost 3 key cornerbacks in this past free agency. So I don't see a world where they don't come out of this draft with a cornerback. So I'm going to have them go with who I think is the best cornerback in this draft right now, Mansour Delane out of LSU. And now we're at the 10th pick with the New York Giants, and we look at how the board has fallen. I think there's a lot of really intriguing options. So they addressed the off the ball linebacker spot earlier with Sonny Styles, which I think is a great pick for them. And now I think they're in a spot where they just go best player available. And I think a lot of people have been saying that this is the Jordan Tyson spot where they just go and infuse him into this team. And I certainly see a world where they go and grab Jordan Tyson here if they really like him. I also see a world where they go and grab Caleb Downs and just get that versatile chess piece now on that defense. And with Harbaugh, he values having that type of skill set like Kyle Hamilton. So getting a guy who can really replicate that, I think allows Harbaugh to do exactly what he wants to do with his defenses. And I see a world where that's really going to happen. I don't think Mekhi Lemon is going to be the pick. I think he has the most transferable skill set to what that offense needs, which is kind of that versatile slot receiver to do a lot of the underneath stuff. But when I look at the roster construction that I see, I don't think the Ravens really utilize a traditional slot receiver nearly as much as other offenses do. So for that reason, especially looking at how they signed Isaiah Likely in free agency and Theo Johnson really came into his own last year, I think they're going to be operating out of more multi-tight end personnel, which isn't really going to be conducive to drafting a slot wide receiver who does underneath stuff. So I don't think it's going to be Mekhi Lemon. I think it comes down to Tyson or Caleb Downs. And for that reason, I'm actually going to have fun with this. I'm going to say they go Caleb Downs, safety out of Ohio State. I think he fills a role and has a skill set that Harbaugh himself is really going to value. And I think there's so many wide receivers in this draft that you can go after and you can get that I don't think that it's as pressing to go and address wide receiver right now. Which brings us to 11 with the Miami Dolphins, a team who I think is ecstatic that wide receivers are falling right here. And this is a team that's just looking to get as much talent as it can. It's in a complete rebuilding phase of its trajectory right now. So for them, I don't see a world where they're really looking to compete right away. So I could see where they just take a swing on whoever they think has the most upside. So is that Mekhi Lemon? Is that Jordan Tyson? Is it a cornerback like Jermod McCoy? Is it going to be one of these offensive linemen? They could really go in any direction, which is what I really love about a lot of teams in this first round right now, is they've really positioned themselves where really anything could be in play. But for this draft, I like the idea of them going and getting a defensive back. I think that Jeff Hafley, the former defensive coordinator with the Green Bay Packers, has shown a really good ability to develop secondary talent. There is a lot of really deep draft picks over at Green Bay that came into their own in the secondary. I think of Nixon, who was like a 5th or 6th round guy that was a consistent starter for Green Bay and was a really highly rated player according to Pro Football Focus. So for that reason, I think they play into what the coach is good at, and they get a cornerback in Jermod McCoy out of Tennessee. And I really like that pick for them. I think it fills a need, and let's just hope that he's able to come back to his old 2024 self. So now at number 12 with the Dallas Cowboys, I think this could also be a defensive back if there's one available. But to see that Jermod McCoy and Mansour Delane have already come off the board is probably a little bit difficult for them to see. So I think they start to look at, who's the best player available. And for them, I think it's probably the best defensive player available. So for them, is that Dylan Thieneman, the safety out of Oregon? Is that Keldrick Falk taking a swing on the upside? Do they want to go with a guy who's way more pro-ready, a little bit older in Akeem Mesidor, right? There's a lot of different options that they could go with here in this draft. And I'm not really sure what the Cowboys end up doing. But if I was the GM, if I was Jerry myself and I was picking for this team, I think what I would want to do is I would want to go and get a defensive player to help out this team. And I think what would help them out the most is getting just a versatile player that can do a lot of different things for your team. And this is where I'm going to have my first big reach of the draft. I'm going to have them actually not getting Dylan Thieneman. I'm going to have them go get Emmanuel McNeil Warren, the safety out of Toledo. I think Toledo has sneakily produced a lot of really awesome draft prospects. I think of Quinyon Mitchell, the cornerback 1 with the Philadelphia Eagles, who was taken at the end of the first round just a couple of years ago. I think of the defensive tackle now who's probably going to be starting for the Giants this year in Darius Alexander, a guy who was mocked in the first round and ended up sliding to about the third round. So for that reason, I think this is just a cut from the same cloth type of situation there with Toledo. Just a very talented, big, athletic athlete that you can play in so many different roles. You can put him in the box as an off-the-ball linebacker. You can match him up against tight ends, against slot receivers. He can help blitz after the quarterback. He can help support in the run game. He can do everything you need him to do on a defense. And if I'm the Cowboys, that's the type of player that I want. Just someone who makes our team better. And it may seem like a reach to a lot of people, especially with Thieneman on the board, but I just see him as such a versatile chess piece. And if I'm the GM for the Cowboys, that's the type of move that I would look to make. So now 13 with the Rams. I stand by my opinion that I think the best move for the Rams to continue to compete and win now would be to get an offensive lineman. But given how the board has fallen here, it's fallen a lot differently than it did in my initial mock draft. And I originally didn't have them getting a wide receiver because the only one available out of the top three last time was Mekhi Lemon, who I just thought had a really redundant skill set to the receivers they already have. But now Jordan Tyson's available. And I think Jordan Tyson can absolutely be more of an outside boundary guy. I think he's got such an amazing skill set, just a little bit of an injury concern. But I think Tyson translates into this offense way better than Mekhi Lemon does. And it allows Terrence Ferguson, who really came into his own last year for the Rams, to continue to develop more in that second tight end, big slot type of role. So I'm going to have the Rams going wide receiver and taking Jordan Tyson out of Arizona State and really helping out that wide receiver room. And I love that move for them actually quite a bit. So now we're in Baltimore. And I think I had them go Kenyon Sadiq last time. I'm not going to do that this time. I'm going to be a little bit different. And for them, I think the biggest thing that they need to do is protect Lamar Jackson. I think they just need to get more protection there. They've been getting older and older on that offensive line. And of course, they just lost Tyler Linderbaum over to the Las Vegas Raiders. So I think they go interior offensive line. And I think the best interior guy is still available on the board right here, being Vega Ione out of Penn State. 15 with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I could see this being another off-the-ball linebacker spot. I really like C.J. Allen, but I do think that this is a little bit high to be drafting an off-the-ball linebacker that isn't really projected to be this high. So I don't think it ends up being C.J. Allen. I could see a world where they end up going with an edge rusher and kind of making that move. I could also see a world where some people say they go tight end, but I kind of like Cade Otton and I kind of like what he's doing there. So for that reason, I don't think that's going to be the pick either. I'm going to have them go edge rusher and I'm going to have them go Akeem Mesidor. And the reason that I have them do this is I once again think this division is wide open and I think anything is possible. So when it comes to drafting talent, I think everybody in the NFC South here is going to be drafting guys that can help them win right now. And Akeem Mesidor being an older prospect who really carried themselves like a professional all last year, talking in interviews about spending his NIL to go through professional level recovery and training. Like, this is a guy who carries him as a professional already, and walking in the door, I think is going to translate into being more of a day one type of player for this team, and it'll allow them to be more competitive right away at a position of need. So while the age thing can be an issue for a lot of teams, where Tampa Bay is right now, I think it puts them in a win now position, which is where they want to be. So now we're at number 16 with the Jets, and we had them go with the edge out of Texas Tech with David Bailey with their second pick right there. And this is a spot now where I think Mekhi Lemon is the perfect pick for them. And I think this is a pick where I'm going to be maintaining from my last mock draft. Mekhi Lemon, I think, fills such a great need for the Jets. Garrett Wilson can predominantly be that boundary outside guy. And I think Mekhi Lemon can really be an underneath reception monster for the Jets here, especially a team that I think is having a really young and up-and-coming offensive line. I think this is going to be a great option for them. And whatever they end up doing with quarterback, I think they're going to be very thankful to get more talented receivers in that room to help them out. So Mekhi Lem is the pick right there. And now we're at pick 17 with my Detroit Lions. I think that they're going to go a lot of different positions. I think the biggest needs that I see with this team is, personally, I think they could get more talented in their secondary, but I think that's kind of a secondary need. I don't think that's a primary concern because they spent a lot of money in free agency doing that. They brought in Larry Borum to play right tackle because they're moving Penei Sewell over to left tackle, but he's never really been in a position to be a consistent every down starter, and I do have concerns about him doing that. And I see a lot of, I guess, lack of depth across our roster still on the offensive line. So for that reason, I do think that offensive line could be in play here. I also think that off the ball linebacker is still a position of need. And I do think that edge rusher could absolutely be in play depending on who they think is available. But for me personally, there's a guy that's falling in this draft right now that I think they would be ecstatic to pick. And that's going to be offensive tackle out of Utah, Spencer Fano, a guy who has both tackle and guard flexibility. So no matter what happens across this offensive line, whether it be injury, whether it be, skill set, matchup things that they want to do, I think Spencer Fano continues to help add depth and talent to an offensive line that really needs to get younger and more talented. Of course, they lost, a lot of key starters this past offseason there while also battling tons of injuries. So I love this pick for them, and I think that makes the most sense for what they need to do. 18 with the Minnesota Vikings. I'm going to continue with the exact same thing that I've been doing. I'm going to say that's Dylan Thieneman, the safety out of Oregon. I think this makes the most sense for them, and I think this is exactly who Brian Flores would love to have in that defense. So I'm not going to dwell too much on that one. 19 with the Carolina Panthers. I think they're going to be sprinting this into the draft. I think they're going to go and get Kenyon Sadiq, the tight end out of Oregon. He can play so many different roles for this team. He can be a big slot wide receiver. He can be an inline tight end and play alongside Jatavian Sanders. My biggest concern is the tight ends that they have in there don't really have a blocking skill set. So I am worried about 12-13 personnel and their ability to contribute in both the run game or the pass game. But Kenyon Sadiq is just such a versatile talent and so unbelievably athletic that I think you can find so many creative ways to have him help your offense. So I think they would love that. And Bryce Young would absolutely be ecstatic to get someone like that onto their team. Number 20 with the Dallas Cowboys. They took Emmanuel McNeil-Warren at number 12, which was a big reach for me in this draft. But what I think they end up doing here is there's a guy that they could have gotten at 12 that's kind of falling once again in this draft as well. And I think it's just because he's a very high risk, high upside type of player. But I'm going to have them go edge out of Auburn, Keldrick Falk. They're really going to be going all in on this defense. And to come out of this first round with an edge rusher with potential and a very versatile defensive chess piece at safety in Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, I think really puts this defense in a great position. And I think the Cowboys fans would really love to see a draft that shaped out something like this. Number 21 with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think there's a guy that's been falling in this draft that they're not going to let slide. And I think that's probably going to be Monroe Freeling right here, the offensive tackle out of Georgia. At the beginning of the month here, I remember seeing Monroe Freeling get mocked as high as 6 to the Browns. And so I think he's just a guy right now that is one of the few in this draft that has true tackle measurables. There's so many tackles or guys that are listed as tackle in this draft class that most likely are going to translate to being more of an inside guard type of player just because of their measurables. And Monroe Freeling is just the anomaly right now of one of the top prospects in this draft that still has measurables that translate to being an NFL caliber tackle. So I could see him going high. I could see him falling. I don't really know how a lot of teams are going to be valuing that, but I'm going to have the Pittsburgh Steelers going and grabbing him. He's unbelievably talented, and I think he fits what the Steelers like to do. And then 22, I think this is also going to be offensive line. I think that the Chargers were riddled with injuries on the offensive line, and Justin Herbert paid the price. Like, he got destroyed this past season. And for them, I think they just need to get talent across that offensive line, but more importantly in the inside, because they have Rashawn Slater, who's going to be coming back. They have Joe Alt, who's going to be coming back, and that's going to hold off your right and left tackles. They also have Mekhi Becton, who's going to be coming back, who I think they slot into probably right guard somewhere. So I think the type of prospect that they'd be looking for on the offensive line is a guy who can predominantly operate out of an inside role at guard, but then if there's injuries or something happens, they can move him out to tackle based off schemes, matchups, whatever they need to do, and kind of help fill a need there should anything happen. And there's one guy in this draft, and he's the top guy right here on this board, that I still think is exactly what the Chargers would value, that being Caden Proctor out of Alabama, a guy who probably translates to being a guard prospect, but has SEC caliber tackle experience that I think the Chargers would value. 23 with the Eagles, I stand by it. I think the biggest need that I remember from watching the Eagles play this past year was they got absolutely exposed on their defense at cornerback 2. While Quinyon Mitchell does a great job as CB1 and Cooper DeJean does a great job as their nickel slot cornerback, I think we saw the age of Darius Slay and Adoree Jackson really get exposed at that second wide receiver spot. And with teams really getting deeper and deeper at wide receiver, that becomes a glaring liability on this team. And for that reason, I think they need to get a younger, more talented guy there. And Avion Terrell is someone that I think fills that need very well. This guy has pretty good size. He's 5'10", 3'4", but I think this guy is going to be a great talent for this team. And I think he's an unbelievable corner that is perfect for the 23 spot here for the Eagles. 24 for the Cleveland Browns. I know I had kind of talked about this earlier at their top pick. I think they could certainly go offensive line. And kind of as I was saying, I think there's more availability of offensive linemen kind of at this spot, whether it be Blake Miller, who a lot of people are high on, or Caleb Lomu, who's really falling in this draft right now, or even going an inside guy like Chase Basantis is another guy I've seen sneak into the first round in a lot of mock drafts. But I'm going to have them go Caleb Lomu, offensive tackle out of Utah. I think it just becomes best offensive tackle available. Is that Caleb Lomu? Is it Blake Miller? Is it somebody else? I think this 24 spot becomes an offensive lineman type of spot. So now we're almost done with the draft here. We're at the Chicago Bears, who once again, I could see a trade down situation. And what I've seen in my comment sections is a lot of people also want the Bears to trade down at this spot. But I don't want to try and predict trades in my mock drafts. I just want to have fun and just speculate on what direction I think teams are going to go with these picks. So the Bears, I think, have glaring needs across their front seven. And I think that's kind of a culture thing with the Bears, is really being strong in their front seven. So for that reason, I think that's the direction that they go here. A team that's really rounded out quite well. They've got good wide receivers there, even after getting rid of DJ Moore. I think they could improve their running back room, but I don't think that's not like a glaring need in my opinion. But they have good tight ends in Cole Kmet and Colston Loveland. They have a good offensive line with the first Protector of the Year winner, Joe Thuney, who's there. So for them, I could also see a cornerback just because of the fact that they lost Najon Wright in free agency this past year. But I'm going to have them go with an interior defensive lineman. I had them go Peter Woods last time, so I'll be different. I'm going to have them go Caden McDonald this time, the defensive tackle out of Ohio State, who I think really fills a need for this team. At 26, I think last time I went cornerback here, I think I said Avion Terrell, but a lot of the Bills fans, when they commented on it, they just didn't like the idea of Buffalo going with a cornerback. They were all in on just going with an edge rusher, but when I just look at how the board is falling right now, I just don't really see like a good edge rusher prospect that fits at 26 right here. I mean, Zion Young, if you like him at that spot, TJ Parker, Cassius Howell has really picked up a lot of steam. Like, if they like one of those guys, then yeah, like absolutely go with an edge rusher. It's definitely important to have rotational depth at edge rusher, especially when we look at the fact that both Super Bowl champs the past 2 years did not have a double-digit sack getter on their team. It's all about depth, rotation, playing the matchups. So getting more guys there to help out Greg Rousseau, I think makes a lot of sense. But for me, like, I think you need cornerbacks. I think you need CBs, some secondary help. I mean, Max Hairston really did a pretty bang up job I think he had like back-to-back games with an interception last year, but I think that they could do more there. And a guy who I think can really help out this team and fill that Taron Johnson role that they lost is going to be Colton Hood, cornerback out of Tennessee. Taron Johnson really came into his own with Buffalo as that slot corner who can match up against a lot of different positions, who's a really feisty player and not afraid to get involved in the run game. And I think that screams exactly what Colton Hood is and did for the Tennessee Volunteers. So for that reason, I actually think Buffalo goes cornerback, and instead of going with more of a boundary guy like Avion Terrell in the last one, I'm going to have them go with more of a slot guy to kind of take on that Taron Johnson role, and I think that's exactly what they need. But let me know if you disagree. At 27, I had my big reach in that mock draft with them going and taking Eli Stowers, the tight end out of Vanderbilt, who I thought and still think is an unbelievable talent. But I'm going to be a little more traditional this time. I'm going to say that they go wide receiver, and I think he's falling in this draft, but I think he's so good. I'm going to have them take Omar Cooper Jr. I think this is a guy who they'd probably see falling in the draft and just not let get past them at 27. And I think the Patriots would probably be a little heartbroken to see this. The Dolphins would certainly be heartbroken to see this. But he's just too good there, and I think it's a no-brainer. That's absolutely a position of need for them. At 28, the Houston Texans, I think they need to go offensive line. They traded away a lot of their aging starters for draft capital, and I think they just need to get younger there and just get more talented there. And I think it's more an interior guy, so I'm going to keep with what I did last time. I'm going to have them go Chase Basantis, the offensive guard out of Texas A&M, which I think is an unsexy move, but it keeps him in state, and it fills a huge position of need. And I think that's a great pick for the Houston Texans. 29 with Kansas City. What did I have them do earlier? I had them go cornerback with Mansour Delane up there in the draft. And I think I had them trying to get like a versatile safety last time. But of course, all of those prospects are kind of gone already. So I think the question then becomes, what do they end up doing here? And I think where the Chiefs really flourished was when they were able to get pressure with 4. And when Tershawn Wharton left in free agency a couple years ago, I think he went to Carolina. I think they were missing another inside guy to add pressure to this offensive line. So it led to a lot more double teams on Chris Jones, which made it much easier for offenses to move the ball against the Chiefs. But I think if you get another talented interior guy to help out this team, I think that really rounds out this team a lot more and allows someone who you just paid a crap ton of money to in George Karlaftis to do what he does best a little bit better. So I'm going to have them go with a guy who's also falling in this draft, that being Peter Woods, the defensive tackle out of Clemson. And I think that fills a really big need for them. And I don't think that tight end is a glaring need. I think tight end they can look at later on. 30 right now with the Miami Dolphins. This is most likely going to be a wide receiver because I had them go in Jermod McCoy, cornerback out of Tennessee. So for that reason, I'm probably going to have them go. I think other teams, I think a lot of GMs right now value Casey Concepcion more. He's a slot guy. I don't think he's a true X boundary guy, and he struggled with drops, so I'm not as high on him. I think Denzel Boston has the skill set that they're looking for in Miami a lot more. This guy is just so strong at the catch point. I think this guy can be much more of that contested catch athlete, kind of like a Romeo Doubs was for Green Bay, and someone who I think Malik Willis will really build a rapport with moving into the starting quarterback role here in Miami. And I think he is exactly what that wide receiver room needs. Because I think they have guys like Malik Washington who can do a little more of that underneath stuff that Casey Concepcion would do. But I don't think they have a player like Denzel Boston. 31 now with the New England Patriots. I kind of agree that I don't think that Casey Concepcion is really a good fit here. And I'm just kind of spitballing here. A guy who I think they could really find a use for on this team is, I'm going to do it again, Eli Stowers, tight end out of Vanderbilt. Hunter Henry's getting up there in age. He's an older player, and yeah, he's doing a great job. But I think in the short term, you can run a lot of 12, 13 personnel with Eli Stowers and Hunter Henry and have a ton of success, really emphasizing the run game. But then Stowers can be so versatile as a receiver and a weapon for Drake May. And I think that's something that Vrabel values over there, and something New England has had a lot of success with, is multi-tight end personnel. So for that reason, I'm going to say Eli Stowers here. I'm going to keep him in the first round. I just love him as a prospect, and he's just such a great athlete. And that brings us over to pick 32 with the Seattle Seahawks. They could really go a lot of different directions and kind of do with whatever they want to do. And that's kind of what they've shown that they do over the years. Of course, the Rashad Penny first round pick that they did. So I think they end up just taking whoever they think is the best player. But for me, I think they just lost Reek Woolen in free agency, and they want to continue to make their secondary as good as it can. And I think they go Brandon Cisse, cornerback out of South Carolina, who I think is a really good talent, and I think fills a need for them and helps replenish what they lost in free agency. But that's my final mock draft for the 2026 NFL draft. Let me know how I did. Let me know what you think for this upcoming draft. I'm very excited to see what happens with it. And just once again, guys, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching my content, engaging with it, liking, commenting. And if you enjoy the stuff that we do here, by all means, consider subscribing. And if you want to give hate, by all means, give hate. But I appreciate you all being here. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.